Dear all, thank you for joining us again. It's like good morning, you know, and welcome to the One World Heritage our World Heritage 2021 debates and the month dedicated to the impact of disaster and pandemics on World Heritage sites. I am Humberto Bonomo, Director of the Cultural Heritage Center at the Pontificia Universidad Católica de Chile, and with Fernando Pérez, Karen Gole, Yolanda Muñoz, and Hilter González, we plan this very satisfying seminar, One World Seminar, that brings us profound knowledge and accumulated from around the world on how pandemics and natural disasters have affected and continue affecting our World Heritage sites. The speakers of this session will kindly share different case studies, experiences, and lessons, allowing us to obtain a better context related to the recent situation and state of our World Heritage. Throughout this month, we have organized more than 20 sessions and conversation, a collective effort of more than 100 people, some of which are from the most remote areas of the globe. I would like also to thank to all the coordinator of each sessions and the presenters who will accompany us throughout this month. For those who not know our World Heritage Foundation, it seemed relevant to me to recall our goals. The purpose of the foundation is to promote heritage protection, conservation, and management, to support knowledge-based decision-making, to promote good governance of the World Heritage Convention, and to engage, maybe the most important, to engage and empower civil society in heritage protection and management. Having said this, I will introduce the theme of this month, sharing with you a short video that explains how disaster and pandemics have affected the world that we live. Hilter, please. I do it for you.
One second, please.
I can do it, don't worry.
Okay.
Recent disasters and an actual pandemic have exposed the fragility and vulnerability of our world heritage. These exceptional sites and pieces, which we would like to preserve for all humanity and future generations, do not exist in a segregated world. They belong to our social environment and our daily life. But at the same time, the World Heritage Sites are in danger. They are threatened by natural hazards that attempt against their existence. The pandemic has revealed their fragility and how much the human presence in them is vital and necessary for their survival. How can we protect them and at the same time give them life and new meanings? If we hope for a future for them, we should stop considering them only as beautiful objects or places, merchandise for the tourist industry, and fully integrate them into the social and cultural dynamics of daily life. We propose to promote a great discussion around the world on the risks and effects of disasters and pandemics on World Heritage Sites. We invite non-governmental organizations, academies, representatives of civil society, and local governments to participate, to contribute with new proposals for public policies on the conservation and safeguarding of the cultural and natural heritage of humanity.
Okay. And now I will present the session, today's session. Having said this, I will introduce the theme of this month. Please silence Hilton. Silence I will introduce the theme of this month, sharing with you, well, yeah, I said that. Today's session is prevention and conservation in World Heritage Sites, which is moderated by Marcela Hurtado, president of ICOMOS Chile, architect, specialist in conservation and restoration, PhD in history of art and Ibero-American architecture, professor at the Department of Architecture in la Universidad Técnica Federico Santa María, and director of the Master in Sustainable Architecture Rehabilitation, member of the International Scientific Committee on the Analysis and Restoration of Structures of Architectural Heritage. Marcela, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Humberto. Good morning, good evening, and good night to everyone. Welcome to today's session focused on prevention and conservation in World Heritage Sites. First of all, special thanks to our speaker who will present cases from different regions of the world. Thanks also to Catholic University for inviting me to coordinate this session. Thank you, Humberto, Karen, and Yolanda. Let me start making a short presentation about the topic of today. In recent times, the vulnerability of cultural heritage because of both natural and man-made threats has been demonstrated. The consequence of the loss of cultural heritage in all expressions has a strong impact on the history and tradition of people and communities, affecting their normal social, economic, and environment development. In this scenario, it is essential to install and strengthen capacities for disaster risk management among all stakeholders to reduce vulnerability to potential threats. In this sense, investing in prevention through programs, regulation, or projects should be a priority task to contribute to preservation of heritage and to promote sustainable development of the communities. We're going to start today with Takeyuki Okubo. He's a professor at the graduate school at the College of Science and Engineer of Ritsumeikan University in Kyoto, Japan. He is also director of the Institute of Disaster Mitigation for Urban Cultural Heritage at the same university. He's member of ICOMOS I-Corp since 2004. He is also board of the member of ICOMOS Japan since 2019, a member of the board of ICOMOS International since 2020. His background in civil engineering, architecture, and global environment engineering, he informs his current research interest: urban and architectural design for disaster mitigation of historic cities, which promote the utilization of traditional knowledge for disaster mitigation of heritage with wood and flammable materials. His recent work includes the management of the UNESCO Chair International Training Course on Disaster Risk Management for Cultural Heritage and Historic Cities, which has been held every year since 2006. He also teaches as UNESCO Chair Professor since 2019. Welcome, Professor Okubo. He's going to present protecting historic areas of wooden buildings from the fire due to earthquake using natural water sources in Kiyomizu area. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Maria. So very nice to see you. So this is Takeyuki Okubo, and today I would like to explain about, may I share the screen? Okay. Was it okay?
Perfect.
Okay, okay, thank you. So today I would like to explain about fire disaster prevention in case of historic city of Kyoto. So you know, Kyoto and Japan is a very famous as so much disaster situations. And especially in the case of historic city, so most of the buildings are built by wood and paper. So as that we should think about how to survive the earthquake and post-earthquake fire. And this is the background of Kyoto. So we have so many historic cultural heritage, including the World Cultural Heritage Site. Number is 15. And the population is also very high with so elder people. The city is also very old, but living people, most of the people are elder persons. And also we have so many visitors from Japan and also the abroad. And the night time number of the people is almost 1.5 million, but the number of the tourists is more than 50 million per year. And also we face the risk of earthquake every day. And you know, the earthquake is occurred periodically. And basically in this area, so we have 100 or 150 years big earthquake occurred. But the last earthquake is already occurred in 1830. So at that, the time limit is over. In the scene of the disaster situations, most of the narrow street, historical narrow street, will be blocked because of the debris, and also the for the firefighting, we need a much amount of firefighting water, but because of the cutoff of the freshwater network, maybe so it can be very difficult, and especially in the scene of the earthquake fire. So we have so much multiple simultaneous outbreaks in a short times, so as that the situation is drastically changed from the daily basis. So as that now we understand it is not possible to rely entirely on governmental or official supportance in disaster. So as that we should think about how to control the fire with the local peoples and also the existing water resources in the area. And this shows the location of the historic district. And today I would like to discuss about the site nearby the Kiyomizu World Cultural Heritage Center. And this is the photos. You can see the very traditional and beautiful scenery, but because of the slope structure, so as that even in the daily basis, it is very difficult to go inside by the emergency services. And most of the buildings are built by wood. And every building is stand by side by side, and so as that if fire started, so it can be easy to spreading. And this is the important tower, wooden pagoda named Yasaka, and also so we have very narrow street and like maze. But this is a very important cultural value in the same time. So as that we should think about how to promote the safe environment with those cultural and historical values in the same times. And this is the site for the project. Started from 2006, where we developed water distribution systems other than the freshwater network. So, you know, in the scene of the earthquake, we should keep the backup systems for future. And the first project is started at the center of this Kiyomizu World Cultural Heritage areas. And so at first, we should develop the water resources for the first step. So as that, we built 1,500 cubic meters rainwater cisterns in the underground of the center of this area. And this is a cut image of distribution and utilization of water. So we try to connect the hydrants for citizens for quick fire controls. in the scene of the serious disaster, maybe the professional firefighters sometimes cannot reach at the site. And so as that we need to support the local people's activities at first. And this is an example of the citizens hydrant. We should think about how to design those equipment to harmonize with the historic environment. And we design those fire fighting equipment not only for emergency situations, but also for the daily basis. You can see the photographs using this fire equipment for water spraying to stabilize the dust in the road. So as that they can use it without any fire prevention drills from daily basis. And we try to modify these systems more easy to use for daily uses. I'm sorry, it's Japanese. And after that, we try to build the backup water reservoir on the higher elevations. On the ground, we need a pumping system to pressurize the water. But in the scene of the emergency situations, sometimes such kind of the engine and get damaged. So as that, we try to build another backup systems on the upper side of elevations. At last, we very fortunately find a site in the Kiyomizu World Heritage areas. And so as that, we can use the water, not only the pumping system, but also the gravity pressurized systems. And this is a summary of the firefighting phase. So the first stage is civic activities. So the local people try to extinguish the fire with a citizens hydrant. And the second stage needs a professional firefighters who can use a professional existing hydrant and so on. But in the scene of the spreading fire situations, it is very difficult to control the fire because of the much high temperature and also the narrow street. So we try to develop the special nozzles to spray the little amount of water to the surface of the wooden facade of the narrow street. So so if the water can spray on the surface, it can control the temperature within 100 degrees. And so as that we try to make the experiment to how much water is needed for control the surface within 100 degrees. And now we already developed this special nozzles for Myoshinji temples. And this is a future plan to distribute these water sealed systems on the narrow street to divide the site into the small blocks of possible fire spread. And this is a test case to save the cultural heritage from the spreading fire. So we try to set this kind of the nozzles surrounding the important heritage sites to control the radiant heat by the water spray. And this is a completed plan of water supply systems. And of course, for future, we need to expand this system towards the whole of the possible spreading areas. But because of the fund limitation, it is a long way to reach to the goal. And this times I explain about the water distribution systems using the natural rainwater, but it needs much money and time. But in case of most of the historic city, we have so many water resources in the site. And so as that we should think about how to utilize and regenerate the capacity of existing water for fire control. Thank you for your attention. Oh, okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this very interesting presentation, Professor Okubo. Now is the turn for Peter Philips. Peter Philips is conservation architect management, his own company since 1982. He's lectured on conservation and heritage in the Faculty of Design, Architecture and Building at the University of Technology in Sydney. He has held different positions in ICOMOS as Secretary General and Vice President. He's member of ICOMOS Delegation to World Heritage Committee since 2015, and is an expert member of the International Scientific Committee on the Analysis and Restoration of Structures of Architectural Heritage since 2008. He's president of ICOMOS Australia between 2005 and 2008, and treasurer between 2003 and 2005. He's going to present the conservation management in troubled times, the Sydney Opera House. Welcome, Peter, and you have the floor.
Can you see my screen?
Yes,
Splendid.
perfect, Peter.
Okay, thank you. Right, welcome to everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I want to begin, as we do in Australia, by acknowledging the First Nations people, both of my country and of all the countries in which we are present. I myself am on land which is the traditional owners are the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and the Opera House is also part of land of the Eora Nation. I want to acknowledge and pay my respects to the elders, past and present and emerging, and also acknowledge their care for the land, and because, as they have taught us, if we care for country, it will care for us. I particularly want to acknowledge a past leader of the Eora Nation, whose name is Wallara Bangalong, and his name has been anglicised as Benelong. And this piece of land which you see in front of you is where a hut was built for Benelong shortly after the European colonisers arrived. The place itself was known as Tubagule, which is translated as where the knowledge waters meet. So fast forward 150 years, and Sydney, now a thriving city, decides that it wants an opera house. And this is where they decide to put it, on this point, which is now called Benelong Point. Fast forward another 50 years, and the Sydney Opera House is inscribed on the World Heritage List in 2007 as a masterpiece of human creativity. And it's called An Extraordinary Interpretation and Response to the Setting in Sydney Harbour. These are some of the quotes from the Statement of Outstanding Universal Value. A daring and visionary experiment that has had an enduring influence on the emerging architecture of the late 20th century, and it represents multiple strands of creativity, both in architectural form and structural design. This is these two illustrations. The first one is one of Utzon's early sketches. The second one, obviously, his developed sketch for the original proposal for the shells, which was as a thin shell structure. And after a great deal of work by Utzon and Ove Arup, the structural engineer, to demonstrate that the thin shell structure was impossible at the time, Utzon came up with the rib structure using this analogy of the pieces cut out of the same sphere and rearranged to form what we now see as the shells of the Opera House. a remarkable piece of architectural thinking. So now, one of the key aspects of the Sydney Opera House is its setting, and it's mentioned in the Statement of Outstanding Universal Value. The map you see on the left there is in red is the site itself. This is the World Heritage Map, and the area hatched is the buffer zone. And you can see that the majority of that buffer zone is water. It's the water of Sydney Harbour. And here you see the Opera House on Bennelong Point sitting surrounded by water. So obviously and the response of the designers to the harbour setting was one of the key aspects which won them the competition, and of course also one of the aspects of its outstanding universal value. But as you can see, the Opera House is vulnerable to sea level rise. The map on the right, which I hope you can see, is an indication of the rate of sea level rise around Australia measured during satellite altimetry from 1993 to 2019. And the darker the colour, the more the sea level has risen in each decade. If you know your map of Australia, you will see that this dark part here is actually where Sydney is. So the Sydney Harbour is rising faster than the rest of the ocean around Australia. The lower concourse of the Opera House, which is behind the seawall here, is at the moment about 0.6 metres above mean sea level. The loading dock, which is underneath the forecourt, and the car park, which is behind it underneath the cliff, are all below sea level. The predicted sea level rise by the end of the century is at least 3/4 of a metre. So you can see that there's a vulnerability here. So we're not talking about a disaster that's happened at this stage. We're talking about one that appears likely to happen and that needs a response. At this stage, there is although people are aware of that, there's no considered response to that potential disaster. The other thing about the Opera House is it's the purpose for which it was built. And this is not actually mentioned in the Statement of Outstanding Universal Value, except in passing. But clearly it is a fundamental aspect of the significance of this place, particularly when you look at national significance and state significance. And this is not uncommon in World Heritage, that the things that matter to the people where the place is are very often not quite the same as the reasons for which they are celebrated and inscribed on the list. So this is, an absolutely typical full house performance in the Sydney Opera House Concert Hall. I have to say also that the concert hall is undergoing some changes at the moment, which will hopefully make the acoustics even better. But what if nobody can perform or come to a performance in the Opera House, which is exactly what happened last year? COVID-19 closed the Opera House completely from March to November. So the whole purpose for which this place existed could not happen. Now, clearly, it had a huge effect on the companies that use the Opera House. The effect on tourism was essentially the same as for any World Heritage site. But because this is a performance venue, the effect is even more marked. Some of those companies could develop an online presence, and certainly the Opera House did its best to produce an online presence. They had a program called From Our House to Your House, which was intended to try and do that, but the place itself was empty. So how do you conserve places like this? There is an extremely detailed conservation management plan. This is, in fact, the 4th edition of the conservation management plan, and it's an extraordinarily complicated document. what it does, apart from the usual conservation planning aspects of assessing what the significance of the place is and developing policies for conserving that significance, it actually breaks down the whole of the place into its different elements. Each of those elements is then broken down further into its components. And for each of those components, the attributes are examined. So, for example, the attributes can consist of the form of the component, the material of which it's made, and its location. And all of those are given a rating which relates to their tolerance for change. And the tolerance for change is obviously directly related to the significance of the component and the whole element. The more significant the element is, the lower the tolerance for change. But in some cases, the material could be changed without affecting the significance greatly. In a very few cases, the location might be changed. It's actually a really good way of looking at the place and guiding how it can change in the future. And the original architect, Utzon, acknowledged that the place did have to change and develop over its lifetime, because these places are not static, and particularly its primary purpose is performance, and the needs of performance are changing all the time. Associated with that is a risk management policy. And this, I think, is possibly the first risk management policy that, in my experience, that actually puts heritage in as one of the issues that need to be managed under risk. And you can see that all of these, the different risks are assessed according to their significance, and the usual risk management processes apply: the likelihood of the event, the duration of the event, its impact, whether it's significant or not, and so on. The interesting thing is that the current risk management policy really doesn't look at long-term cumulative things such as sea level rise or extraordinary events like pandemics. And so perhaps a future edition of the risk management policy will need to look at those things. That's it. I'm happy to take questions when we come to them.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Peter, for this very interesting presentation about that wonderful building. And now let's move to Africa. Welcome to Khalid Harrouni. He is a PhD by University of Portsmouth, Computational Mechanics in Wessex Institute of Technology in United Kingdom, and State Engineer Diploma Civil Engineer by Mohammedia School of Engineering, University Mohammed V in Rabat, Morocco. He's a full professor of civil engineer and computational mechanics, deputy director of research and the École Nationale d'Architecture, Rabat, Morocco, responsible of doctoral studies, centers, architecture and related discipline of the same École, and scientific coordinator of the research theme sustainability in architecture and urbanism. He is expert scientific evaluator appointed by the National Center for Scientific and Traditional Research in Morocco since October 2019. He's also expert member and vice president of ISCARSAH and vice president of ICOMOS Morocco. He has more than 30 years research and professional experience in civil engineer, urban planning, building, energy efficient, advanced computational technique, and heritage architecture. The presentation is Prevention and Conservation Management of Cultural Heritage in Fez, Medina, Morocco, a World Heritage Site. Welcome, and you have the floor, Khalid.
Thank you very much, Marcela. I will excuse me, I am looking for my presentation. Can you see my presentation?
Yes, Khalid. Yes.
Okay. Thank you again, Marcela. I would like to thank and to congratulate the organizers for this event, especially our colleague from Chile. And as you said, my presentation is about the prevention and conservation management of the cultural heritage in Fez, Medina, as a World Heritage Site. Medina of Fez was founded in the 9th century, and it reached its high in the 14th century under the Marinids, and again in the 17th century. Of course, Medina of Fez is among of Moroccan Medinas network, and as you can see here, is located in the center of Morocco. We have more than 30 Medinas in the whole of the country. Because we are talking about the disaster and the pandemics, let me say that, of course, all the pandemics that affected Morocco include, of course, smallpox, typhus, plague, cholera, and of course, currently COVID-19. And all these epidemics have affected Morocco from the 15th century, because we have some information, of course, on these epidemics. And we can say that we had the Maghreb plague of the 15th, 16th, focusing, of course, on Fez, Medina, especially the Mellah, the Jewish quarter in the Medina, and other of course, other epidemics. There is also another problem. Of course, all the historical buildings and monuments and Islamic heritage architecture are located in active seismic zone. And in Fez, Medina also was affected by some violent seismic. And we can see here the frequency of earthquakes which struck the town of Fez. A lot of violent earthquakes. According to the regular paraseismic of the country, as you see, of course, Medina of Fez is located in, we can say, middle seismic zone. If we compare it with the other zones, for example, here in red color, we have the high seismicity. So, Fez as a World Heritage City in 1981 is the spiritual, scientific, and cultural capital of Morocco. few years ago, Fez Medina offered a striking contrast between areas of thriving economic activity and over-densified residential quarters, whose buildings have been deteriorated steadily. We have, of course, cultural heritage and monumental of an exceptional richness, including, of course, historical buildings, residential buildings, mosques, madrasas, caravansaries, and so on. But we have also some degraded historical built environments, and the Medina is today a major economic center for the whole urban agglomerates of Fez, and its economic sectors are artisanship and tourism. Let me again give you some figures. Donc, we said that the foundation date was in 9th century. The area 300 hectares and very high density, and more than 14,000 of historic buildings, including residential and monuments, and of course other building. We have also a large number of historic monuments, 3,000. And of course, we have also one of the oldest universities in the Islamic world, the Al-Qarawiyyin. We can say that Al-Qarawiyyin University Mosque was in 857 and marked the start of the city's golden age. The Fez Medina was subjected and still subject to an extensive rehabilitation program, aims which started in the year 1981 to today, and runs over 35 years. The Safeguard program aims at restoring and preserving the economic, cultural value, and social heritage of old city. And this safeguard process, we can, of course, decline it in some principal stage. The first one started from 18. So during this stage or this period, we had the launching of the safeguard process of Fez, and the second stage, deepening and experimentation, and the third one, collaboration with the international financial institutions and launching of the GREAT structuring program. And we can also show all this stage and of course with objectives, approach, and tools used during each stage, and of course all stakeholders or actors involved in the process. The second one, so I will go through all this, and the third one, and the fourth, from 2005 to 2013, some development programs was initiated during this period, and not the last one, because we have now another program from 2018, and the objective is to rehabilitate historical building to 2022. So, of course, the global development objective were declined in the following components: development of the historic buildings, rehabilitation programs, improvement of accessibility and emergency circulation network inside, of course, the Medina, improvement of the Medina environment, exploration of the rehabilitation process to eradicate poverty, and institutional strengthening and capacity building. We have some illustration to show you now the situation, and of course compare it to the before. For example, in this guide. Here, a good example, Ras Sharatin Madrasa. Before and after, of course, rehabilitation and restoration. Some conclusion. There are, of course, some areas of success of the conservation program of FES in terms of social participation, which is essential for the successful rehabilitation of the historic housing stock. And reconciling the objectives of urban conservation and the rehabilitation with the housing needs of the insolvent inhabitant is feasible through a process of consultation and social participation in the design and implementation of the interventions of the historic housing stock, especially housing stock. But the tenure of land and buildings is a critical difficulty in the rehabilitation of historic cities. Municipalities should consider delegating urban rehabilitation operations to competent agency. And we can say urban rehabilitation projects should be designed according to simple objective and design, and given complexities of intervening historic cities, the related interventions should not try and address all of the needs under a single operation, but should rather support a program or programmatic approach. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Khalid. Thank you very much for your very interesting presentation. Now, I'm going to present Elena Mamani. Elena is graduated architecture engineering from the National Technical University of Athens in 2004 and worked for several years as specialist and director in urban planning office of Eurocastra region, deputy director program manager, Cultural Heritage Without Borders, Albania, and her engagement in the field of cultural heritage started back in 2008 with the first projects of cultural heritage without borders in Albania. She's mainly working with conservation projects, emergency interventions, and regional training programs. She has been training in disaster risk management for cultural heritage in course organized by ICOMOS and Ritsumeikan University in Japan. And since then, she is managing together with her colleague the projects of cultural heritage without border Albania related to this topic, starting from emergency intervention in building at risk, piloting new ideas on the protection of monuments from disaster and regional training with professionals at the Balkans region. She is currently engaged in the reconstruction and restoration process of 4 national importance monuments that are damaged by the earthquake that hit Albania in November 2019. Her presentation is Earthquake Disaster Response, Cultural Heritage Without Borders in Albania. Welcome, Elena, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Marcela. Can you see the presentation now?
Yes, you can see.
I'd like to first thank you for the introduction, and above all, thank you for inviting us to present one of our projects in this very important seminar. So today I will talk about a project of earthquake disaster response that we are implementing since last year in Albania. I'll talk a little bit about Cultural Heritage Without Borders. We are a foundation, an independent non-governmental organization dedicated to rescuing and preserving tangible and intangible cultural heritage affected by conflict, neglect, or natural disasters. The organization started back in 1995 as a reaction to the disasters of destruction of cultural heritage monuments during the conflict in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and we are active for more than 25 years now in the Western Balkans. And our perspective broadened from early post-conflict reconstruction to mid-term social recovery and long-term stability and economical development. We are now actually 3 independent offices in Albania, Kosovo, and Bosnia and Herzegovina, but we are part of a big CHWB family. Our vision is that everyone has the right to enjoy, have access to, and participate in cultural heritage. Our mission is that heritage is used as a right and as a resource. Cultural heritage is used to strengthen peace building and to promote economical development of the societies. We work with civil society organizations, cultural and educational institutions, international development agencies, private sector organizations, and governmental agencies. And we work very closely also with the members of the society, but we wouldn't be able to implement all our projects without the support of our donors. So to give a little bit context of Albania, it's a small country positioned in the Balkan Peninsula, and it is surrounded by Greece, North Macedonia, Kosovo, and Montenegro. It is very rich in historical and cultural heritage monuments, varying from remains of ancient civilizations, Byzantine and post-Byzantine churches, mosques, old bridges, castles, and the vernacular architecture. We have 4 World Heritage sites within our territory, with the last one, the extension of Albanian part of Ohrid Lake, and included as a natural and cultural heritage, World Heritage. Albania, it's vulnerable. It's a small country, but it is vulnerable to a range of natural and human-affected disasters, from earthquakes, floods, landslides, fires, and another disaster which is slow. Its effect is really slow, but again very important when it comes to cultural heritage, and it's the lack of maintenance, abandonment, or illegal interventions. On November 2019, Albania was hit by a huge earthquake that caused significant casualties and property damage. Unfortunately, there were loss of people's lives, but there were also, of a particular concern was also the damages to the cultural heritage properties, and there were 53 monuments that were damaged, out of which 23 were classified as a very high risk. We, as the Cultural Heritage Without Borders, undertook the restoration of 4 of these monuments damaged by the earthquake, and they are positioned in 3 different cities in the central of Albania. We are working with Tower C in Durrës that are part of the ancient walls of Durrës city, the castle of Preza, and the 2 buildings, the clock tower in Kruja and the Teke of Dolma, again within the castle of Kruja. But due to the limited time, I'm going to talk only for 2 of these interventions in this presentation. This is a project that is implemented and designed and implemented by CHWB Albania with the financial support of Ambassadors Fund for Cultural Preservation, Prince Claus Fund, and Sweden. And we are working in collaboration with World Monument Fund, National Institute of Cultural Heritage, and Ministry of Culture. The project is divided in several phases, and we have started from preparation and implementation of emergency stabilizations to stabilize and to secure the buildings and to secure also the people who are working in the site. And then we are preparing, we have prepared some of, and we are now preparing conservation approaches for full restoration and rehabilitation of the buildings. we are going to implement the works, and also the project includes interpretation, education, and a proposal for revitalization of these buildings. The first building is the Tower C of Durrës, and it is a building that the first phase starts from the Byzantine period, and it has different phases because the building was also destroyed by another big earthquake in 13th century. But there is also a later phase from the Ottoman period. You can see here the photo after the earthquake, and how these big pieces of wall have been spread out in the terrain. We started immediately after the earthquake with the documentation and preparation of this emergency stabilization. And when we have the project ready and all the approvals by the institutions, then the pandemic strikes. So we were forced to a lockdown for 2 or 3 months. We couldn't really start the works, but as soon as the situation became a little bit better, we immediately started with implementing the emergency propping, first by moving actually all the big fragments and cleaning the site in order to be able to do a better documentation and the necessary analysis. We have been documenting all the pieces of the wall, and you can see here trying also to identify where these pieces were standing in the wall, and to see if it will be possible then to put them back in their place. We did the necessary geological studies, analysis of the materials, and different other surveys. And we finally, in July last year, we were able to implement or to put this first metal structure that will stabilize temporarily the wall, and will create also a safe environment for the people who are working around. We continued then with different studies and analysis, from trying to find all pictures and understand what was the reason of collapse, and then doing even seismic analysis, and this is actually simulation of collapse. And we have prepared then the conservation proposal, and our aim is to try to put back all the pieces of the wall back in their place and fill the pieces that are completely destroyed, and create also a secure tying of the wall in order to secure it for further earthquakes in the future. We have just started the implementation of the works with cleaning the interior, and it's also a project that we always say the restoration project it's finalized when the works are finalized. So by doing test pits, we also reconsider our approach, and we make proper decisions for the reinforcement of the existing structure. The second building is the clock tower of Kruja. This is also a building that the early phases were from the 11th and 12th century. It is also thought that this building has been destroyed by another earthquake, and we can understand that there is a phase of rebuilding of the structure, and then in the 17th century it was turned into a clock tower. The building was damaged very much by the earthquake, and also the causes were different because of the different interventions and the missing of the wooden ties that were reinforcing the building, but also some interventions with the concrete that were done in the 70s that created some stress to the underneath structure. Here, actually, there is a huge problem also with the stabilization of the rock underneath. So at this phase, we have planned emergency stabilization with these iron ties of the building until the stabilization of the under rock is done, and then we will in the same time prepare the conservation project, and later on finalize also the full restoration of the building. And we have now started the works of this first tying and stabilization of the structure And we are in this phase of the moment. Here is also some photos from the interior and how the structure is destroyed. So these are only two of the buildings we are working with, and we are under implementation. So I hope we will have other opportunities to, it's a 2 years long project, and I hope we'll have other opportunities to share with you the final result of this project. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Elena. Very interesting project, and yes, we want to see the results of that interventions. Thank you. Now is the turn of Stephen Kelly. He's an architect, an engineer who was devoted these two skills to the preservation of built cultural heritage. With 35 years of experience, his project ranged from small to immersive, simple to sophisticated, and cover a wide range of building materials and systems. His award-winning projects are located through the United States of America and Asia, Europe, Africa, and the Caribbean. He has managed state-of-the-art multidisciplinary teams that were designed to meet the demand of each project. He has served to the board of directors of both the United States Committee of ICOMOS and the Association for Preservation Technology. He is past chair of the American Society for Testing and Material on Building Preservation and Rehabilitation Technologies. He is past president in the International Scientific Committee of the Analysis and Restoration of Structures of Architectural Heritage, and he is UNESCO Tangible Heritage Expert. He's going to present us the 2010 earthquake and the measure to conserve the Citadel World Heritage Site. Welcome, Steve, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Marcela. I assume everybody can see my screen?
Yes, we can see.
Okay, that's wonderful. I'm gratified to be with you all today, and I thank the organizers for pulling this together. I've got a lot to cover, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. I've been working in Haiti since 2010. I've been there about 17, 18 times, working in different parts of the country. This is the Caribbean Sea, South America. Here's Florida, part of the United States, and this is the island of Hispaniola, and this is where Haiti is located. It's a very large island with two nations on it. There are cruise ships that go all through the Caribbean in pre-pandemic times, and that will be back again. So there's a lot of tourism that stops at about all of these islands, but they don't stop in Haiti. Normally, they don't stop in Haiti. Haiti has a really interesting history. These are the first people of Haiti, the Taínos. The second people of Haiti were the colonizers, first the Spanish, who came and enslaved the first people, who turned out to not be very good slaves, and they were killed off. And there are none of these descendants left in Haiti. Mostly in the Dominican Republic, you have Taínos, but not in Haiti. And so Africans were brought over to run the plantation society. The interesting thing that happened in Haiti, however, is that they had a successful slave rebellion and revolution, which lasted from 1789 to 1904. And so they became a free island nation very early, with a black African population. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time about the history, but Toussaint Louverture was the hero of the revolution. Very early on, the country was split into two areas. There was a republic and there was a state in the north. Henri Christophe, who is going to be the main person in our narrative of this tale. Here's a picture of the island of Hispaniola. Columbus first landed here in December of 1492. He named the island Hispaniola, which means Little Spain. I'm going to briefly talk about Port-au-Prince down here in Cap-Haïtien, where the Citadel World Heritage Site is located. There was an earthquake in January of 2010, which happened in this area very close to Port-au-Prince. This is when I first went to Port-au-Prince. This is what it looked like when we first got there. It is recovering now, but at the time it was in complete pandemonium. We were working on the gingerbread houses, and this was a project that we were doing with ICOMOS, with the World Monuments Fund, and with the Association for Preservation Technology. We looked at about 200 of these gingerbread houses. Some of them we were able to restore. This is just an example of one of those projects. This is the Maison du Fort. As we first saw it, almost completely destroyed, we were able to restore it, put it in a seismic rehabilitation system, and now it is the center of the arts in Port-au-Prince. And so they have art exhibits on the inside, and they have musical performance on the outside, and those are continuing through COVID. So now we're going to go to the northern part of Haiti. This is the Palais Sans Souci, which was constructed by Emperor Henri Christophe in 1811 to 1813, and it was destroyed by an earthquake in 1842. He had already passed away, and then it was looted. And one of the reasons it was looted is he was not a very popular emperor. The country had been freed of its slavery. However, he indentured people into building 9 palaces and 15 forts, and he did it during his short tenure as emperor. So this is the way it exists today, and it's been this way since 1842. It's amazing that it's holding together the way it is. It's a fairly large plot of land. This is the Palais. I'm not going to talk about everything here. I'm going to focus on the Chapelle Royale, which is down here. This is the only view that we have of the Palais Sans Souci prior to its destruction. It was a naive painting by Numa de Roche, circa 1818. He was about 17 years old when he painted this picture, but we get an idea of the palace, the grounds, and here is the chapelle, which I'm going to discuss. Some other images of here's the chapel here, and the ruins, the extensive ruins. Okay, the Chapelle Royale, also known as the Chapelle de Millau. This is the village of Millau. If you ever visit this World Heritage Site, you'll come into town, you'll come into Millau, and then you'll go uphill and you'll get to the Palais Sans Souci. This is a larger church than it looks like. Here's another image of it, and a photograph from the interior. These are all photographs that I took in 2016, 2017. This is what the chapel looked like pre-1930. You can see that the dome had collapsed. It was made out of wood, and it had collapsed, possibly it burned, and it was reconstructed in 1930. And again, it's hard to get an idea of how large this structure really is, because it's a very large structure. And unfortunately, this is the way it looked on the morning after 17 April 2020, when it burned down again. And those of us who worked on this site, we were heartbroken to see that this had occurred. So this was the one structure at the Palais Sans Souci that was actually being used as a church for the village. But let's go up the side of the mountain, overlooking the Palais Sans Souci, and also overlooking Cap-Haïtien is the Citadel La Ferrière, which also was constructed in 1811 to 1813, and it was damaged by the earthquake in 1842, and then it was looted. Fortunately, most inside the fort were so heavy that they couldn't be taken away, and they're still there today. This is an image of the fortress. I'm going to focus my discussion on the Batterie Croix David, which is here. This is the largest and most authentic fortress in the Caribbean. It is amazing, and it's in amazingly good shape. Here you can see they still have the cannonballs in place. An interesting aspect of this fortress is it's sitting on top of a mountain, and the mountain is a limestone outcropping, and you can see a little bit of the outcropping here. And so it is firmly planted on bedrock, and I firmly believe that this is one of the reasons why it's still standing, is because it's got such wonderful foundations. A view from the inside, you can see there the cannons are still in place. This was the armory that had a large explosion, which is part of the history, and I don't have time to talk about it, but you can see it standing in place, even though it had this huge explosion on the inside. And some images of the in and around the fortress. So this is anybody who's interested in fortresses, this would be a dream trip to take. Difficult to get to, however. And this is the Batterie Croix David. It's got some large cracks in it. Everybody talks about these being fairly new. However, some of us know Gustavo Arauz, who was, as a young man, was he was actually stationed by the organization, the OAS, in Cap Haitian, and he remembers these cracks. And indeed, I think that many of these cracks probably are from the 1842 earthquake, which damaged just the Batterie Croix David. And here you can see some images of the interior of the Batterie Croix David, and you can see some of the damage, which is significant. One of the things that we did, and by the way, we were retained by UNESCO as the heritage architect, and we came up with a conservation management plan for the entire park. And I'll talk about that in question and answers if anybody has any questions. But right now, I just want to tell the story of the extreme challenges that we have with this project. So we came up with an emergency stabilization for the Batterie Croix David, which was shoring and some horizontal metal ties to hold everything together. These are the archives of the National Park and World Heritage Site in Cap Haitian. They're in a very poor state. One of the boxes, I opened it up, and there was a photograph that was taken off the wall of Papadoc Duvalier, which kind of dates the last time that anybody actually used this archive was at least 30 years ago. And so this is in a fairly poor state. I put this photograph in because the last time I was at the fortress. There are three ways to get to the fortress. You can walk, hike up the mountain, you can go by horseback, or you can go by all-terrain vehicle. And I would always go by horseback. And the gentleman on the right with a very pained expression on his face is Emilius, who I would always rent my horses from Emilius. And this was the day after I was thrown from my horse. Actually, I wasn't thrown from the horse. The equipment, the horse's equipment was so bad that the saddle just collapsed and dumped me off onto the road. And they patched me up, and I came back the next day. I got back on my horse. But Emilius was he was pretty shaken by the whole thing, more so than me. Just to give you an idea, this is a national park, and on the back side, I told you that on the front side you go through the village of Milo, but on the back side is the village of Dondon. Dondon is a village that was founded by the Marron, and the Marron were enslaved people who fled the plantation and went up into the mountains and lived a sole existence of subsistence farming. And their descendants are still there. They're fiercely independent people. And of course, this is one of the voodoo caves that you can visit if you ever go to Dondon, because the voodoo culture is still alive in some parts of Haiti. And closing, one of the problems we have here is the encroachment of settlements within the national park. There are people who live there, and of course it's okay for people to live in a World Heritage Site. But for instance, this woman, her shanty, this is right below the Chapel to Milo. And if we're going to do any work on the chapel, then actually she's going to have to move. People drying their clothes, the watering hole, the local watering hole, which is right below the Palais Sans-Souci. It's charming and and shows the extreme poverty in Haiti. Haiti has wonderful people, very artistic. They have an interesting cuisine. I can't say it's a wonderful cuisine, but it's certainly very interesting, and I've gotten very used to it. Working in Haiti, I've always had to work with the local architects and engineers who need training, because the capacity they are in dire need of capacity building, not only of professional but of skilled labor. So, in conclusion, Haiti has a deep and varied and interesting culture in art, in music, but it's very hard to experience because though there is a large tourism industry in the Caribbean, people don't go to Haiti, and the reason is because of the extreme poverty. And to be honest, many people would be afraid to go there, and it's not an easy country to travel in. There were significant historical events that occurred here, and the Citadel and this national park, and so it's extremely important to the people of Haiti. It's got a high degree of authenticity. However, there are significant vulnerabilities to this World Heritage Site, which has to do with earthquakes and hurricanes, but really the most significant vulnerability are the economic challenges. You've seen the poorly kept archives. I've talked about the low capacity in professional and skilled labor. There's a very poor infrastructure to and through the site. So if you wanted to visit this site, it would be difficult for you to get there. You could, and you can, but it's difficult to get to. And of course, I showed that photograph of me being thrown off of a horse because there are dangers just actually going to the site. There is encroaching settlements. The heritage is not well safeguarded, which is represented by the fact that the Chapel de Milo, it burned down 13 months ago. And of course, the pandemic has closed the island down. I'm still in touch with my colleagues in Haiti, but the pandemic is just one other of a multitude of challenges that are faced by Haiti. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Steve, for this interesting presentation, and also for share with us your personal experience on the island. And now, our last presentation is Claudia González. Claudia González is an architect from the Catholic University in Santiago de Chile, Master in Science in Environment, Science and Society for the University College in London. She holds a postgraduate degree in Sustainable Development in the University of London, 2011. She's member of ICOMOS Chile and the College Architect of Chile. She's president of the Corporation of Risk and Disaster Management Grid Chile and professor at the University Federico Santa Maria. She has participated in different projects related to natural disaster and conservation of cultural heritage, and also she coordinated studies related to the nomination of the Capagnan part of the UNESCO World Heritage Site. Claudia is going to present to us the fragility of the Inca road system, the Capagnan, in Chile. Welcome, Claudia. You have the floor.
Thank you, Marcela, and thank all the organizers for this interesting seminar. Could you see the screen, the presentation?
Yes, Claudia, yes.
Well, I will present the case of Capacñán in Chile. The Capacñán or Andean Road System is a World Heritage Site with segments located in 6 countries: Ecuador, Colombia, Peru, Bolivia, Argentina, and Chile. In Chile, it is composed by a series of fragments of roads and archaeological sites related to the presence of the Inca in the north of the country. Many of the roads have a pre-Inca origin, and they were later used by local communities up to the 20th century. Some of them were subsequently transformed into modern roads. Unlike we observed in Peru, the Capacñán in Chile is a little known heritage here in the country. And as you can see in the images, the road has a wide diversity of typologies according to the geography it crosses, slopes and topographic conditions, as well as soil types. The width varies from 40 centimeters to more than 6 meters. Here in the third image, you can see that there is a modern road that has the previous track of the Capacñán, and in the middle of the image, you can see the remaining of the Inca trail. The geographies have a long history of human occupations from 6,000 before present approximately, and at present several indigenous communities inhabit these territories. The archaeological sites, however, were abandoned after the Spanish conquest, and although there were also processes of abandonment before that due to climate reasons. Today, some of the problems we have is that there are a continuous rural to urban migration and the change of land use patterns that make also this heritage very vulnerable. The building techniques involve the use of local materials, mainly stones, and in some cases they are built with adobe, rounded river stones, and also edged volcanic rocks were employed for the construction of the structures. For the constructions of the delimitation of the roads, they were used the materials located in the surroundings, and also for the construction of the associated structures, like this kind of little structures that allow to indicate some directions of the road in the middle of the desert. The construction technique expresses the wisdom of taking advantage of local resources and adaptability to the particular environment. The preservation of the road, in spite of its lack of use and maintenance, was proof of that wisdom and also the efficiency of the techniques employed. However, more than a century later, from the last use most of the roads had, made the roads very vulnerable to climatic conditions. The techniques used to save slopes require a great knowledge of materials and construction systems, but they are very fragile to the effects of natural agents, particularly rainfall and landslide in areas of high slope. Among the main hazards are earthquake, wind erosion, landslide, flash floods, and also activities such as mining, or even renewable energy projects, wind and solar, due to the fragility of the landscape. Prepared during the period of the nomination for the Capacñán to the World Heritage List, the alteration of the sites were studied, and also the geological condition at the regional level and at the local level. At the local level, they were studied by each of the segments of the roads and also the places where the archaeological sites are located, identifying the main natural hazards, but also for the conservation plans, all the alterations of the site and the road and their effect on the values of the Campagnan were studied. There were also, as you can see, well, in the first table, each of the alterations were studied and how they affect each of the values for each segment of the road and each site. And also they were prioritized in order to propose conservation actions according to the frequency and severity. Here are for a summary of the main hazards and the natural hazard and main induced hazard for one of the segments of the Inca Trail, which is the Cupo Topain segment. And in the low part of the screen, you can see that, for example, in the cases of Catarpe, most natural hazards are earthquake, landslide, heavy rain events, the riverine floods, debris flow from the river course, and weathering because of the difference between the temperature between the day and night. Among the main human-induced hazards, you can see that the uncontrolled tourism activities in the sites, looting of cemetery remainings and other archaeological objects, the changes in the riverbed for building hotels, and also water of the river controlled and channeled to irrigate the cultural land. The main vulnerability and exposure of those sites are the structural width integrity that is common for all of the sites in the Campagnan. The soil and slope conditions of site location make it highly exposed to landslide. There is no management body in action yet, 10th year after the management plan was finished. There is lack of science and information. There is disagreement about how to manage the site, the tourism in the site between the local indigenous communities and the state part. And the people of Catarpe do not live there, and that is also a common problem to all of these segments and for the roads and site, because normally the people doesn't live in the traditional towns, but live now in the city. So the places are more abandoned than before. And the possible impacts to the main attributes are the weakness or loss of structures due to earthquake, water erosion, weathering, and landslide, the erosion of damage of trails due to lack of maintenance, the loss of archaeological values due to looting, the injuries, possible injuries to visitors due to earthquake, landslide, or other hazards that may active. The visitors or local people could be trapped or injured because of the flash floods or the debris flow in the riverbed, and the economic activities of the local populations could be affected too. Here is a summary, a graphic summary about the natural hazards and how they interact with the different kinds of types of vulnerabilities. The physical vulnerability related to the materials and the state of the structures, the environmental vulnerabilities due to climate change, institutional vulnerabilities because there is no management, active and effective management of the site yet, the loss of historic or archaeological values, and the possible effects on the cultural and economic of the local communities. Some factors exacerbating vulnerability of the Campagnan are the changes of land use patterns and also the economic activities of the local population, because they now prefer live in the city, or they work on mining, or they work on services, and they have abandoned the traditional towns. There are mining and other productive activities such this, for example, these projects of renewable energy, the geological hazards, and most of all, more recently, we have seen a lot of effects of the climate change. There is also a bureaucracy problem for making projects of conservation and preservation in the site because of lack of management and lack of resources. So we have some long-lasting landscape, but there are very high risk. And we will see some examples now about how these risks have evolved in the time. When we studied the site and the risk present in each of the segments and the sites, we studied also previous events. For example, for the sector named Finca Chañaral, we identified some effects from a landslide occurring in 1972. We have also observed rock falls into the site, and also erosion in the riverbed for previous landslide events. In the 2015 event, this is a massive event that affected the Atacama region and also affected the entire Rio Salado and Copiapó River Basin, affecting localities in the region. For example, Diego de Almagro, which is the capital of the municipality of Diego de Almagro, where Finca Chañaral here in the red circle is located. And all the drainage on the basin of the Rio Salado and Rio Copiapó were affected by landslide that started in the high part of the basin, and then very quickly moved into the slow parts of the basin until it finished in Chañaral at the coast, affecting a lot of places, also Diego Almagro, Copiapó, the capital of the region of the Atacama, and other cities like Chañaral. In that occasion, the event occurred in the 23 or 25 March in 2015. It caused damages about $1.5 billion. It affected 3 regions of the country and almost 200,000 people. And the Finca Chañaral, which is one of the sites recognized by the Capagnan, was partially destroyed. As you can see, the event was so massive that some of the river basin and the riverbed has like 2 or 3 meters of eroded. And one of the attributes of the site, they called House of Filippi, was destroyed. Here in the lower left image, you can see the structure before the event and then after the event. We also have seen the change in the patterns of precipitation and the period in which they are concentrated. There is normally summer rains each year related to the altiplanic winter that we call, but during the last years we have observed changing of patterns and a lot of more extreme events. These images, for example, are from 2019 event, and they are in the region of Arican Parinacota. This is the northern part of the Capagnan in Chile, and there are landslides here affecting some parts of the road, and also there is erosion and the water ran through the trail, so they have been eroded very quickly. There is also this case of the Tambo Camar, which was almost completely destroyed during the February 2019 event, because it was a very unusual extreme event related to summer rains. In that event in particular, 6 people died, not here in this site, but in the region, and there caused a lot of economic disruption related to tourism, mining, agriculture, and so on. So as you can see, we have we still do not have in place management body for each of the segments. There is the complexity that all of the segments are related to different communities, and also there are different administrative regions. So, and we still have a very centralized administrative system of cultural heritage in Chile. So we have a lot of challenges, and there is a call for urgent action regarding Capac Ñan conservation, because it's a very fragile site, and some of the challenges we recognize are the priorities of local communities. They change quickly after the last event, and also because of the pandemic. There are a lack of economic resources to preservation and protection of cultural heritage in Chile, and in particular to this site, because there is a very complex site. The state involvement and the priorities set to this site is still very low, and the lack of effective managing is one of the most important challenges. And as time passed, we lost of local knowledge and lost of local techniques that were used to build the sites in the first place. So we need to start working very quickly if we don't want to lose more of the Capac Ñan site, which is more vulnerable now to the climate, due to the climate change and other hazards. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Claudia, for the interesting presentation and to highlight the impact of climate change, particularly here in Capac Ñan, roads in Capac Ñan. Now we have time for some discussion, for some question. It was really interesting to see the different cases from different parts of the world, and also different period, from archaeological sites to a site from the 20th century. And I really appreciate that. And all of you I want to start asking a question to all the panelists, and all of you have mentioned the importance of the community as a key actor in risk management in general, in the different part of the process. And in some cases, like the case of that Peter or Khalid presented, are public buildings. The case of Stephen or Elena, for example, are the public space is also important as the potential risk that we can find there, or what happened with the owners, the case that Professor Okubo presented to us, and Claudia, you show a very critical situation with where the community is not present, and it is supposed also a big challenger. And my question is about how do you see the interaction, how in the particular cases or your particular cultural situation, how do you see the connection to the community? How can we improve that? How happened that today or not? Please, can you please tell us about that? I want to start with Peter, please.
Well, very good question. One of the things that the Opera House has continually to battle against is the concept that it is an elitist place, that the kinds of performances that it puts on are well, certainly for the rich, and for the the sort of upper end of the culture spectrum. Now they have actually worked quite hard to broaden the range of performances and activities in the Opera House so that everybody feels a part of it. The interesting thing is that most people don't think of it as a heritage place, but simply a place to visit. and go to. And the community really did come out in force when there was a proposal to put a projected advertisement for a horse race onto the sails of the Opera House. Now, we have an annual festival in Sydney every year called Vivid, which is light shows all over the place, and there's wonderful sort of artistic projections on the sails of the Opera House. But this proposal to project basically an advertisement for a horse race onto the shells really did bring the community out in support of not doing that, in other words, not commercializing the place. And to many of us in the heritage community, that was quite a surprise. But, I think there is a deep connection, but it's not necessarily always on show, but it can be on show when events like this bring it out.
Thank you, Peter. Khalid, what can you tell us about the situation in Morocco?
Regarding the safeguarding of Medina of Fez, we can say that the overall rehabilitation strategy could not be launched without seeking adequate tools in terms of institution, financement, and techniques. For, of course, the implementation of the rehabilitation program. And in my conclusions, I evoked the agency for implementing, of course, this program. We didn't mention that in this safeguarding program, there is one actor very involved in this process. It's we call it ADER Fez, the Agency for the Dedensification and Rehabilitation of Fez Medina. Of course, the power of this agency, because it's directly under the Ministry of the Interior. So it's a power actor, and of course he is the main, we can say, interlocuteur, the main significant actor and leader in this program of rehabilitation. And this agency placed stakeholder participation and animation at the core of its implementation strategy, including, as I said, social animation and social participation in housing rehabilitation. And it has set a program of emergency intervention on historic monuments and buildings, and of course, housing unit threatening collapse. This is very important, of course, component of this intervention. Anyway, I would like just to focus on this kind of the involvement of the inhabitant and the population in this safeguarding process. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Khalid. Elena, please.
Yes, actually, we all understand the importance, the key role of the community in all our actions regarding the preservation of cultural heritage. And we have been actually trying different ways of including the different stakeholder groups in all processes of restoration. Actually, to be more precise for this specific project, we are thinking different ways of having meetings and activities with the community. We are now planning, especially in Tower C in Durrës, we are going to build, we call it a restoration corner. And we are planning to have there different activities with different groups of the community throughout the whole process of restoration. So informing the community is really important, and keeping them updated on what is going on with their cultural heritage. We have started also sessions of presentations regarding the interventions we are doing with students from different universities here in Albania. And because it is a pandemic now, we are doing this online. We have prepared also some, like this, for example. Yes, I don't know if you cannot see this. It's like for kids, we have prepared this tool for them to play, to show how you can save a cultural heritage building that is at risk. And they cut, and how you can tie this building. So these are different ways we are different ways to include and to inform different stakeholder groups and the community about our work, and about to make them more aware about the preservation of cultural heritage.
Thank you, Elena. Very interesting. The using of this kind of tools, very useful also, and very easy to get to address the information to the community. Please, Takeyuki, I forgot to
Thank you, Marcela. It's a very important question. So I believe that a community is a most important stakeholder. So in the scene of the serious disasters like earthquake, so it can be a main actor for disaster mitigation activities in the site. And so as that, I would like to ask the local people to utilize firefighting equipment in daily basis. And but because of this COVID-19 pandemic, so it is very, in case of a tourist site, it is very serious conditions, because even in daytimes, sometimes most of the shops and the restaurants are closed. So as that there are no person who can act against emergency situations in this case. And so as that we should think about how to keep the activities and keep the conditions against the emergency situation, even in case of the COVID-19 situations. So it's our challenges also. Thank you very much for your comment.
Thank you. Yes, it is a big challenge. Steve, what can you tell us from your experience in Haiti, please?
Well, I can tell you that at the World Heritage Site, which has 3 sites within it, not the 2 that I presented, but there are 3. There would be no site without the local population that lives there. They make their livelihood, as if you hike up the mountain, there will be people selling you trinkets and playing music. Everybody is looking to benefit from some type of economy. With most World Heritage Sites, we worry about the fact that there are too many tourists, but at this particular World Site, they don't have enough. They don't have enough tourism because it's difficult to get to. So important. And I think that's about I think that's about all I have to say about that. They do need help. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you very much. And Claudia, please.
Yes, thank you for the question. I think there is a big challenge in how to get involved the community in the case of Capacñán. Because, for example, when the process of nomination of the site took place, it took like 10 years, the whole process. So there were a long involvement process of the community of each regional site during those years. But after the nomination process, there were no actions effectively on the site. So the connection with the people almost completely lost. So it is very important to regain the confidence of the people, regain the trust of the people, because there are a lot of unfulfilled promises regarding the conservation of the site, the management of the site, the possible tourist use of some of the sites and the trails. So I think that there should be start together and start again to build that trust with the communities, and also because now the priorities of the communities have changed. They have now a very different priorities regarding the restoration or rebuilding of the economic activities due to the pandemic. All of the tourism in the north of the country was stopped. There were a lot of elderly people that they have been retired, some of them dying soon, some of the local knowledge have been losing in the last years, and probably the children would be a good target to get involved for the next generation to make actions directly on the sites.
Thank you very much, Claudia. Yes, you point out very important. That is very important to educate the young people, and also the situation that you tell, and also Steve, related with what happened after COVID. At the moment, the priorities are probably others. I have here a question from Laura Piccioli. Is for who wants to answer. It's very interesting. I'm going to read. Transmitting how important is to respect local materials in conservation repair is basic in the community as well, but with the climate change, conservation work also needs to be adapted to the new situation. What criteria can we use to choose and decide how on the best intervention without giving up its identity? But sorry, but before I want to give the floor to Steve. Yes, Steve.
Yeah, thank you. That's a very good question. In Haiti, because of a series of fires in Port-au-Prince, they sort of abandoned their local building techniques and went to. This happened in 1925 and was codified. And in fact, a lot of the work that we were doing in Port-au-Prince, I was working with a Belgian group, the Institut de Patrimoine Wallon, and they came in and they were teaching local craftspeople how to use lime mortars. And so we were trying to recreate some of the unreinforced masonry buildings. A lot of faith had been lost in unreinforced masonry building prints, and people were almost exclusively building things in concrete. And the problem with concrete is that if it's not properly designed, it can be just as dangerous as unreinforced masonry in an earthquake. So that was something that was very important to us. Another interesting aspect of Haiti, when we talk about global climate change, a lot of global climate change is poor land management. And in Haiti, when Columbus landed in Haiti in 1492, and for several hundred years, it was a forested, mountainous country. And the forests were pine, old growth mahogany, oaks, all kinds of exotic woods, which were completely harvested. And that was sent to Europe and to North and South America. And so the country now is completely denuded. And if you drive through the countryside, and I did this one day when we went to Jacmel, we were going over the mountains and it was raining, and you could see the erosion was just washing everything into the rivers and down to the sea. And that is because there are no forests left. And so these are really large problems that we face with global climate change, simply because we have significantly changed the landscape. And also because of our post-industrial society, we have lost traditional building techniques. And one of the things that we're trying to do in Haiti is we're trying to regain some of those lost techniques. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you very much. Yes, I remember also that discussion about how to reconstruct the Cathedral of Notre Dame because of the need of wood, and that suppose a problem because of the deforestation. It is a very interesting question. I don't know who want to complement the answer.
Marcela?
Sí, please, Claudia.
Thank you. Yes, regarding the climate change, I think that it is very important in the case of Capagnan, the lack of maintenance. And for example, during the time the roads were used by the local people, they're used to do some annual maintenance of the roads. And when the new roads came and the vehicles and other kinds of modes of transport became prevalent, they stopped using the trails and they stopped maintaining them. So the trails became the new channels of water when the summer rains came. The same happened with ruins, of course. So the first challenge is how to preserve the ruins and the structures, doing some or promoting some kind of regular maintenance of the structures. And then there is another challenge from the use of local materials or other kind of materials or other kind of techniques. But I think that in this case in particular, the lack of maintenance is one of the critical things to address.
Yes, it is. Thank you very much, Claudia. Well, I think that we are on time, Karen. If some of you want to point out something else.
Thank you, Marcela.
Very briefly, I want once again to say thank you to all the speakers. Thank you very much for accepting the invitation, and congratulations for the great presentation and great work that you are doing in your country. And I hope see you soon again. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you, Marcela. And as you said, thank you to the speakers of this session, Professor Takeyuki Okubo, Peter Philips, Khalid El Harrouni, Elena Mamani, Stephen Kelly, and Claudia Gonzalez. They presented interesting cases that expose the vulnerability and the consequence of the loss of cultural heritage. In this scenario, it is essential to install and strengthen capacities for disaster risk management among all the stakeholders in order to reduce vulnerability to potential threats. I would like to invite you to the session 9, culture, heritage, and resilience, local creative responses to natural disasters, COVID-19, and climate change. It is tomorrow, and it will be live streamed on our YouTube channel. Thank you for joining us, and I hope to see you tomorrow. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.